I'm currently scaling this garden and farming based e-commerce brand right here to over $4,013 every single day in revenue with Google Ads alone. This is a brand with both an online presence through their Shopify store as well as an offline presence, meaning an actual retail store based in Florida. Now, in general, this brand actually does roughly $195,000 to $200,000 in revenue every single month. If we look at the last 90 days, this brand has done in total $558,397 in revenue. But before we dive into the actual deep end stuff, into the actual strategy, let's go over the Google Ads results first. Now, this is a brand which we've been working with for the past 3 months or so. If we take a look at the past 90 days up to now, we can see that in general, this brand has been consistent and very profitable in the long run. I mean, if we look at just the conversion value compared to the cost on a week-to-week basis, we can see that overall this revenue, while it did have a little bit of a dip in October, has started to go back up. And if we look at the current results here in the last 90 days, it's 7.30x ROAS. So they spent roughly 50 grand to make back $345,000 in revenue. Now, this is a brand, like I mentioned, which sells farming related products, garden related products, so actual plants and trees, the seeds for these plants. And because of that, some of the plants, some of the trees they sell end up being very high ticket. But on average, the average order value for this brand is roughly $197. And because of the nature of this product, there is a little bit of a restriction in terms of time as to how quickly something can get shipped. And because of this, they end up having to ship almost everything with express delivery, which means their break-even ROAS sits at roughly a 5x. But it has been very easily been getting met and exceeding in the past 30 days because the overall ROAS right now is a 7.16x. Now, taking a closer look at some of the products that this brand sells, if we do a quick search for this product, Norfolk Island Pine, we can see that these are the kinds of products this brand sells. Now, for security reasons, I cannot show the exact product, but in general, these are the kinds of plants that get sold from this website. And overall competition, believe it or not, in this niche is actually fairly competitive just because of the nature of the product, because of the overall brand related images, the overall kind of SEO keywords, etc. But despite that, we have been able to really scale this brand to the next level at a very good ROAS. And how is all of this possible? First and foremost, regardless of any brand or niche that we begin to work with, we always start work from the foundation up. And in most situations, that foundation is the landing page. Now, we're going to go over 2 separate examples of different websites in this niche, which are essentially competitors to the brand we work with. The first one is Costa Farms. The second one is Ed's Plant Shop. Now, both of these brands, they're very different in terms of the overall approach, in terms of the landing pages, the colors, etc. The first one here, Costa Farms, very straightforward, very kind of customized, and you get a real feel that this brand really loves their orange. Because I mean, the main product image has a background of the color orange, whereas the Ed's Plant Shop, it's more of a generic Shopify store. There's really not too much creativity that goes into this brand. And there's a reason why this brand is laid out this way. This is a multi-6-figure, multi-7-figure brand, by the way. The main reason is because there are 2 sides to the spectrum within this niche. One side of the spectrum is where there are brands like these, Costa Farms, where they're going overboard with the overall imagery, with the overall colors, because they really want to speak to their perfect customer. And the other side of the spectrum is this one right here, where they're keeping things very simple, because somebody who wants to buy certain plants, certain plant seeds, they're just gonna come in, look at the product, and they already know if they want to buy from them or not. So it's pretty straightforward. And the key here is to understand which side of the spectrum your brand should be on. Now, for our brand, we decided that somewhere in between would be an ideal approach, because that meant we were getting both sides of the spectrum, where after taking a look at both of these brands, where one was going overboard, they had a very nice color overview, the details were on point, and if we scroll all the way down, their description was also very unique, a lot of orange included here, and then at the very end, basically all we saw was a bunch of orange here, and then the reviews were also the orange buttons. Whereas with Ed's Plant Shop, here things were a bit more structured, a bit more organized, the descriptions were a lot longer, and there were reviews directly here, and everything was just straightforward here, which was also matching Costa Farms layout as well. But from that point onwards, it's all about the overall ad strategy. There had been ads running for a long period of time with this brand, but one issue that this brand had going on was there was a lot of double tracking going on for a long period of time. And if we just take a look very quickly here, we can see within conversion action, within the last 6 months, there was a lot of double tracking going on where the conversions were getting double tracked. There was a lot of additional conversion tracking, and overall, it just didn't make sense to see these numbers right here and this ROAS value right here. So based on our findings, we found out that the conversion tracking codes, they were placed in the wrong areas. And because of that, this actual value was a bit over reported. But that's where essentially we began our work from conversion tracking, moving on to actually the product side of things, ensuring that the products were all optimized. Because as you can see right now, there's still a few disapprovals, which are random disapprovals that we're still dealing with. But this was just the case for this brand, and that's where we began our work. But from there, we kind of adjusted our focus from just focusing on every single product, because there were over 2,000 different SKUs within this product, and we started focusing on more that was spending the most amount of money in the last 30 to 90 days. And that led us to these specific products, which were number one, getting low CPCs, but number two, had high CTRs. We wanted to replicate these results across multiple different products, but also make these results individually go up as well. And that's where we really kind of went in, improved the product titles. We also started incorporating different image sizing as well. And believe it or not, this can actually help you stand out from competitors. Like you can see, for example, here, there's square images, but then there's vertical images like these. And now in this case, the square image is popping out a bit more, but the vertical image seems a bit more right for this kind of layout. Those are the kind of decisions we were making, which eventually, once all of that was fixed, led us to the actual ad strategy. Now, with the ad strategy, we wanted to take a very simple and straightforward approach, mainly because of the shipping issues that this brand faced, and mainly also because of the shipping restrictions it faced. Now, because this brand is based in Florida, there are several restrictions for it when it comes to shipping to the West Coast of the United States, states such as California, Washington, Nevada, Arizona, etc. And because of that, we wanted to launch a very unique strategy that would make it a bit of a more focus with the East Coast compared to the West Coast. And that's essentially what we did. We began with the 2-1 launch strategy, where the main campaign here was the US-wide campaign, where we were not segregating based on collections or bestsellers. In this case, we were segregating based on the coast. So the East Coast versus the West Coast. So this first campaign was for everything that was not on the East Coast, whereas the second campaign, it was just for the East Coast products. As simple as that. And it was a much more unique strategy and approach compared to what we had ever tried before. But on top of that, we launched this dynamic search campaign, because that's what the 2-1 approach is, where you go with 2 major shopping campaigns or performance max campaigns, and then that's followed by 1 dynamic search campaign. And this in the beginning did the trick. It was enough to get the East Coast campaign running at a 14x ROAS, the West Coast campaign running at barely a 6x ROAS, whereas the search campaign was running at 8.79x ROAS. These were amazing results, and we did not want to kind of really cause these results to go down by adding too much fancy effects to it. So instead of applying any types of other campaign types, instead of applying the normal horizontal scaling strategy, we stuck to the vertical scaling approach here, which essentially meant we were increasing the budgets rapidly here while also testing a few more things. And this third campaign here is an excluded products campaign, which we just introduced to basically test everything that we excluded from these first 2 campaigns, basically whatever was not working. And this surprisingly took off on its own as well. But we kept things very simple. We wanted to kind of incorporate all of the 3 phases, which we take every single brand through within these 4 major campaigns: the testing phase, the profitability phase, and the scaling phase. This major campaign at the top, which was essentially for all of the other US states besides the East Coast, was mostly used for testing purposes. And the second campaign right here, it was more for the profitability side of things along with the scaling. But eventually the 3 phases came hand in hand between all of these campaigns, because now this first campaign is mostly testing profitability and scaling, and whatever we want to scale a bit extra, we put it inside this East Coast campaign only. And then whatever doesn't work, we end up just funneling it down to the excluded products campaign. So very simple funnel, but it's doing the trick and it's working wonders. Now, while I do agree that a very simple simple approach is what most e-commerce brands need to scale to the next level, there are certain things that your brand must have right in order to make this scale possible. First thing is that your product need to have demand in general. And with Google Ads, demand equates to search volume. If there's not enough people, if there's not enough monthly search volume for your products, well, it most likely it's not gonna really do that well. Second thing is that your ad strategy needs to be ideal for your brand. This ad strategy right here, it works perfectly for this brand because it's more heavily focused on the shipping side of things. That doesn't mean that this strategy will work for your brand. You still need to customize it. You need to find results first with a generic approach. You could take this approach and then further narrow it or just make it different compared to your current results. But the third and basically final pillar, you need to have back-end systems in place. One thing you want to understand is the front-end level is the campaigns, but the back-end level is where majority of the foundational things come into play. Things such as the product feed. This needs to be optimized on a consistent basis, and it doesn't matter what niche you're in, what industry you sell within. I mean, if we look at just the last 30 days and compare to the previous 30, we can see that overall this ad account has been spending a little bit extra while the ROAS has stayed about the same and the overall revenue also has stayed the same. But that's pretty much expected for a brand which is not seasonal per se, because although it's Q4 when I'm recording this video, this brand does not do extremely well during Q4 because of the niche that it's in. But if you do all of these things properly, if you take everything in a funnel approach, you are going to be able to scale your brand to the next level fairly easily. But if your brand does $40,000 or more per month in revenue and you need just a little bit of extra help scaling your brand to the next level, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and schedule a free call with me to see how we can potentially work together and make that happen. But although I mentioned a lot about the campaign approaches here, you want to check out this video right here on the perfect Google Ads account structure, which goes even more in depth into the perfect account structure you should have and how you can make it customized for your own brand.